I want you to imagine, just for a moment, building an immensely popular creative project entirely from the ground up.
Right, like starting totally alone in your bedroom.
Exactly. Picture yourself drawing everything by hand, and then you watch this passion project just explode into a massive global success.
Yeah.
You hire a massive team to support the sheer scale of it, and you become essentially a studio head overnight.
But then the reality sets in.
Right. Suddenly you find yourself having to restructure the entire operation. You're letting people go. And the absolute hardest part of all this, millions of fans are watching this entire drama unfold in real time, right on the internet.
It's intense.
It really is. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to look closely at a recent article from URBTNews. It's titled "TheOdd1sOut Controversy: Animation Team Layoffs and Restructuring." And the goal today is to explore the incredibly intense collision between the relentless demands of running a massive YouTube channel and the precarious, often unforgiving realities of freelance creative labor.
It's a collision that really perfectly captures the modern digital dilemma. We're looking at a space where the traditional rules of running a business, the emotional expectations of an online community, and the fragile nature of digital gig work are all just crashing into each other at high speed.
Totally.
You have a solo creator thrust into the role of a corporate executive, and workers navigating an industry that often feels like, it's being built in midair while they're flying it.
Okay, let me unpack this. To really understand the gravity of what happened here, we have to set the stage for you.
Right.
Our subject today is James Rallison, who is universally known online as TheOdd1sOut. If you follow YouTube animation, you already know this channel is an absolute behemoth.
Over 20 million subscribers.
You're 20 million, yeah. But the crucial context here is the history of how it grew to that size. Rallison started out animating these videos completely solo, just one creator sharing stories. But as the channel skyrocketed, the demand for higher production value went through the roof. So to keep feeding the beast, he scaled up operations significantly.
He had to.
Right. He brought on a large collaborative team to handle the crushing workload that high-quality animation requires. He hired dedicated artists for storyboards, specialized background designers, video editors, a full team of animators.
It transitioned very publicly from a solo endeavor into a legitimate, collaborative production studio.
Exactly.
And that transition from a lone artist to a manager of a sprawling team is the entire foundation of this controversy. When a channel hits 20 million subscribers, it stops being a fun hobby.
Yeah, it becomes a massive enterprise.
Right. The audience expects a television-level polish, and producing that polish on a regular schedule requires a highly specialized assembly line of artistic talent.
Yeah.
You're no longer just managing your own time.
You're managing payroll.
Payroll, workflows, and the livelihoods of dozens of people.
Which brings us to the inciting incident of this whole situation. Let's jump to early March of 2026. This is when the spark was lit, and it didn't start with a formal press release.
Or a polished company memo.
No, not at all. It started the way so many of these industry shifts do, with a leak. According to the reporting from URBTNews, a freelance animator allegedly posted messages on Discord claiming the entire team at TheOdd1sOut had been abruptly let go.
Because this leaked in an animator Discord, a place where the industry's whisper network is incredibly fast, the studio lost control of the narrative instantly.
Oh, immediately.
When a bombshell message like that drops into a space full of industry peers, it's going to ignite before anyone can get a PR statement ready.
Ignite doesn't even begin to cover it. It was a massive viral firestorm. The screenshots of those Discord messages didn't stay contained to that one server for more than a few minutes.
They never do.
They jumped platforms with incredible speed. Within hours, screenshots were circulating all over X, threading through various subreddits, and immediately being picked up by drama and news channels across YouTube.
And the spread was exponential.
Very exponential. And the narrative driving that spread was heavily focused on the perspective of the animators themselves.
The reporting indicates the involved artists felt an immense sense of confusion. From their perspective, as shared in these initial viral posts, the layoffs happened entirely without warning.
Yeah, they claimed they were completely caught off guard.
Caught off guard, exactly.
Yeah.
And that they had absolutely no indication beforehand that their work with the channel was coming to an end.
It paints a picture of people logging on one day thinking they have stable, ongoing project work, and by the afternoon, the rug is completely pulled out from under them.
Right.
I hear what you're saying about the whisper network moving fast, but from the fans' perspective, this specific narrative, the sudden, unexpected dismissal, is what really triggered the massive uproar.
What's fascinating here is the psychological relationship between the audience and the channel itself. You have to ask yourself why a corporate restructuring caused such a massive visceral reaction among fans.
Yeah, why do they care so much?
Because in most industries, consumers just want the product. They rarely care how the sausage is made. But The Odd Ones Out is fundamentally different.
Very different.
The fans were shocked precisely because the channel had become so famous for its collaborative nature. Rallison had been very transparent about his team over the years.
He showcased them.
Exactly. The fans knew there was a whole crew of storyboard artists, background designers, and animators working together. The identity of the channel had shifted in the minds of the audience from one guy drawing to a beloved family of artists making things together.
A family, yeah.
So when the fans heard that this team was suddenly gone, it felt like a betrayal of the channel's established culture. They simply didn't expect a mass dismissal from a channel they viewed as a close-knit collaborative family.
The perceived culture of the channel clashed violently with the reality of a corporate layoff.
Beautifully put.
Now, as this viral firestorm was raging, James Rallison obviously had to respond. And we're dealing with two very different realities here, depending on who you ask. If you look at the animator's side, it's a story of sudden job loss. But if you look at Rallison's side, it's a completely different narrative. As the criticism reached a fever pitch, he pushed back hard against the viral story.
He did.
He stated the online portrayal of the event was overly dramatic and flat out denied the central claim that he had fired an entire team without any explanation.
He essentially stepped in to say the story circulating on X and Reddit wasn't the reality of what happened behind closed doors.
Exactly. We want to be very impartial here and just look at what the reporting says.
Right. To understand his defense, you have to look past the emotion and focus on the financial reality he outlined. Rallison's core argument was that this was a strictly necessary business decision.
Not a malicious purge.
No, rather a calculated, broader restructuring effort aimed at keeping the channel financially stable in the long term. He argued that maintaining such a massive animation team had simply become economically impossible to justify.
And he got very specific about the core constraints he was facing. The URBT News article outlines 3 major factors Rallison cited. Okay.
First, he pointed to declining productivity. Second, he noted rising production costs over the past year.
Yep.
And third, the most critical factor, despite having this massive team, they were producing very few videos. Because the channel relies entirely on video uploads to generate ad revenue, that low output caused severe financial strain.
It becomes a pure math problem at a certain point. If your overhead, the contract fees for your storyboarders, background artists, animators is steadily rising, but the actual product they're making is slowing down,
the business begins to bleed out.
It bleeds out. Rallison's argument is fundamentally that of a business owner looking at a spreadsheet and realizing the current model will eventually bankrupt the entire enterprise if he doesn't pull the ripcord.
But this brings us to the most fiercely disputed part of the whole controversy, the communication and the severance. We have 2 completely conflicting accounts of how these layoffs were actually handled.
Right.
On one side, we have the critics echoing those initial Discord messages, arguing the animators received sudden dismissals with absolutely no prior warning whatsoever. And on the flip side, we have Rallison's direct rebuttal. According to the report, he claimed he actually spoke individually with each artist before the restructuring even began.
So no one was blindsided, according to him.
Exactly. He strongly pushed back against the idea that they were blindsided. Furthermore, he stated he provided severance payments to several team members to ease the transition.
He also took a very public step to support them, which the article notes. Rallison shared links to the affected artists' portfolios on his massive platform.
Right.
He stated this was to credit their work and actively help them secure jobs with other studios. But this specific action really highlights the divide in how people interpret the situation.
He really does.
I can easily see how supporters view the severance and the public portfolio sharing as a genuine act of goodwill. They see it as Rallison trying to soften the blow and use his influence to help these artists land on their feet in a notoriously tough industry.
But critics view those exact same actions through a much more cynical lens. Some argue that public portfolio sharing is just a performative gesture.
Like it doesn't pay the rent.
Right. From their perspective, a retweet doesn't make up for the sudden loss of a steady paycheck, especially if the artist truly felt the communication leading up to the layoff was inadequate.
Yeah.
It's the difference between seeing a studio head trying to do the right thing in a bad situation versus seeing a wealthy creator trying to manage their own PR after dropping their team.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the entire conflict between Rallison and the artists doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's a symptom of a much larger systemic problem in the digital content world.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the massive tension between the art form of animation itself and the platform it currently lives on, which is YouTube.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can see why this specific niche YouTube animation is an absolute pressure cooker. Let's break down the mechanics.
Let's do it.
Animation, by its very nature, is incredibly labor-intensive. Producing even a few minutes of high-quality animation requires an elaborate pipeline. It takes weeks, and more often months, of dedicated production time to get a single video out the door.
It's like expecting a master chef to produce a Michelin star meal in the time it takes a fast food joint to bag a burger.
That's a great analogy.
YouTube's algorithm simply doesn't care how hard it is to draw a complex background or smooth out a frame rate. The algorithm demands and financially rewards frequent uploads.
Constant feeding.
Constant. It heavily favors the vlog-style content creator who can turn on a camera, talk for 10 minutes, edit it in a day, and upload it the next morning.
Right.
So you have this brutal dilemma. The platform wants content constantly to keep users on the site, but the art form you've chosen takes months to create.
That discrepancy creates an unbearable financial pressure for animation creators. On one hand, they have heavy, fixed production costs paying a large team to slowly craft a video. On the other hand, their ad revenue is tied entirely to audience engagement and algorithm spikes, which dip significantly if you go months without uploading.
So you're starving between uploads.
You're essentially trying to fund a traditional, slow-moving animation studio using the volatile revenue model of a daily vlogger. You have to consider the CPM volatility, the cost per 1,000 views, which fluctuates wildly based on the time of year and advertiser whims.
Right.
When you're only uploading a few times a year, a single video underperforming can completely wipe out your payroll budget for the quarter.
When you lay out that systemic problem, you really start to understand why the fans and industry observers are so deeply divided on this issue. Looking at the supporters of Rallison's decision, they're pointing directly at this systemic issue.
Yeah.
They argue that YouTube animation is just incredibly unpredictable financially. Indie creators face wildly fluctuating revenue streams. The algorithm changes, costs rise, and when your team's output drops, it's mathematically impossible to maintain a large staff on ad revenue alone.
It's just math.
They look at the situation and say, this is just the harsh reality of running an independent studio on a platform you don't control.
But the critics look at the exact same systemic pressure and draw a completely different conclusion about where the responsibility lies.
Right.
They argue that massive channels with 20 million subscribers have a fundamental duty to communicate clearly with their collaborators and build better safety nets. They argue that as a studio head, you have to find ways to buffer your team from that algorithmic volatility.
Rather than just passing the risk down to the gig workers.
Exactly. For the critics, this entire incident is a glaring highlight of the fragile, precarious nature of freelance creative work. It shines a light on an industry built almost entirely on short-term contracts and project-based labor.
Where artists take on all the risk without any of the traditional corporate benefits or job security.
Precisely.
I hear that. But as a studio head with 20 million subscribers, doesn't Rallison also have a responsibility to keep the core business from going bankrupt?
That's the counter-argument, yes.
If the money isn't there because the algorithm isn't rewarding the output, keeping everyone on payroll until the ship sinks doesn't help the artists either. It's a profound debate.
It really is.
Are you a digital business surviving a hostile algorithmic environment, or are you an employer failing to protect your workers from the volatility of your own industry? Both arguments hold significant weight depending on whether you're looking at the spreadsheet or the human cost.
Definitely.
So what does this all mean? Where does the channel and the industry go from here?
Looking at the immediate future of TheOdd1sOut, Rallison has stated he is fully committed to restructuring his production. While he hasn't announced the exact new workflow, the article notes he's indicated the channel will definitely continue to produce animated content.
But probably differently.
Much differently. The days of the massive, sprawling team seem to be over. It'll likely continue with a much smaller team, or perhaps a fundamentally different production process altogether to keep costs in line with the reality of their upload schedule.
It makes you wonder how many other massive channels are quietly looking at their own spreadsheets right now and coming to the exact same conclusion.
Yeah, this raises an important question. What does this mean for the future of creator-led studios as a whole? The source material points out that industry observers are looking at this controversy and seeing a bellwether for the entire space.
A warning sign.
Yeah. The intense financial pressure we've been discussing is pushing many channels to make drastic decisions. Observers are seeing channels either scale back their teams entirely, just like Rallison is doing, or completely change their formats to something far less labor-intensive than animation just to survive.
Wow.
The bubble of the massive creator-led studio might be bursting. As for the longevity of this specific controversy, it's really going to depend on what happens next. The internet moves fast, but this touched a raw nerve regarding labor rights in the digital age.
It really did.
Whether the story fades away or reignites depends heavily on future updates from the channel, and crucially, whether the affected artists decide to share more details about their experiences.
It really is a watershed moment for how we view the people making our favorite digital content. To recap the incredible journey of this deep dive today, we started with a single explosive Discord leak in early March 2026 that tore through the Whisper network. We watched it turn into a massive viral firestorm over allegations of sudden layoffs. We navigated the deeply conflicting accounts between the animators claiming they were blindsided and the studio head claiming it was a carefully communicated, financially necessary restructuring to save a bleeding business.
Right.
And finally, we landed on this incredibly complex debate about the harsh financial realities of trying to fund high-quality YouTube animation while relying on a precarious freelance labor force.
It's a story that forces us to look past the colorful cartoons and examine the very real, often brutal economic machinery that keeps them running. It highlights the profound vulnerability of the independent artist in a landscape entirely dominated by algorithmic demands and unpredictable revenue streams.
And that brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. We talked extensively about the systemic tension between the algorithm rewarding frequent, cheap uploads and the reality that beautiful animation takes months of expensive labor to produce.
Yeah.
I want you to consider what this means for the ultimate fate of independent art on digital platforms. If creators are continually forced to scale back their teams or abandon high-effort, beautiful formats like animation just to survive the crushing algorithmic pressure, what will the landscape of independent digital art actually look like in 5 years?
That's the real question.
Will deep, collaborative, high-quality creative endeavors simply become impossible without massive corporate backing? It's something to mull over the next time you watch a beautifully animated video online and wonder what it really costs to make. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We appreciate you taking the time to explore this complex issue with us. Keep questioning the things you watch, and we'll catch you next time.